Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to begin by giving our praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and shalom to the hopefully elect. All right, so you see the clip playing in the background, right? All right, it says, it's really being comical, but I mean, true nonetheless, right? It says a bear saves fish from drowning, right? Nature is really amazing, right? And, it shows a clip of a bear saving a fish. But the point, right, it says this is how, quote unquote, white people tell history, right? Which specifically we're talking about Esau Edom, right? This is how Esau Edom tells history, right? They have twisted it, they have construed it into a way that caters to them, right? They've developed lies, so on and so forth. Like, for example, they'll have you thinking that, Africans, that we're Africans, right? Which they know that, we are the Israelites, right? Or when you're dealing with the triangular slave trade, right? They'll have you thinking that, Africans sold Africans, and no, Africans, which are Hamites, sold, Israelites, right, into slavery, right? We went into captivity, right? We aren't them, right? But they would have you to think so, But that's just a quick example. Other examples, when you have things like the Renaissance, right? You would never know, what the Dark Ages were. Why? Because they covered the faces of the judges, I mean, that's just the spirit of Esau Edom, right? And we'll go ahead and get some precepts. We'll start with just the one I just brought out. Job 9:24. It says, Job 9:24 says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right? Who is that wicked? Esau Edom, right? That son of perdition, right, is being revealed, right? It says he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. Who are the judges? Right? Who are the judges? The King Davids, the Apostle Paul, Peter, Yahushua, who's the ultimate, so on and so forth, right? He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Right? That's what they have done, right? Like I said, referring to the Renaissance period, right? That's what they did, because Jake ruled in Europe for a point in time, right? That's why it's called the Dark Ages, But when Esau Edom came back into power, you had the Renaissance period where they quite literally painted over the images of, Israel, right? This is First Maccabees, I think it's chapter 3 and verse 48, right? It says, and laid open I started 46 just to get the point. It says, wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Massah over against Jerusalem, for Massah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likenesses of their images. And that's what they did. They opened, they took the scriptures, the Holy Scriptures, right? And they tried to paint over it. They tried to put their images, what they look like, right? We can do a couple of quick examples. Let's see. They painted their own images, They make him look as if he's, a Edomite, right? Or Let's see. Um, Same thing. They look like Edomites. And I mean, I don't even have to look up, you know, Yahushua. We know, what they make them look like, right? But that's what Esau Edom does, man. They rewrite history, and history is of the utmost important, right? Because if you don't know your history, then you're gonna be lost, right? You're not gonna understand. If you don't know that, Jake, Israel has been into captivities, right? On really since, I mean, really since forever, you know, we've been in captivities, if you don't understand that, like when you read, certain chapters, like, Second Esdras, what was that, chapter 11, or, in the book of Revelation, Daniel 7, things like that. When you don't know your history of like kingdoms and kingdoms that fell, of who came into power, so on and so forth. When you don't understand your history, you're gonna be lost. You know, you're not going to be able to understand the scriptures. All right. So this is let's see, what's the next one I want to grab. This is Psalms 83, and I'll just start at 1. Right. It says, a song or psalm of Asaph. Right. It says, keep not thy silence, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. All right, let's look up this word, tumult. To murmur, growl, roar, cry loud. Right, make noise. All right, so continuing on, verse 3, it says, let me start at verse 2 again. It says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult. So they're making a noise. It's like a rumbling, It says, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head, right? So these people are coming up against Yahweh Shemi Shah, right? And his people, as you finna see, right? Verse 3, it says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people. Who are the people of the Lord? Right? Who is the Lord's people? Quick example. Deuteronomy 7:6, it says, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy power. Yahweh thy power have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth, right? And of course, we know this is talking about Israelites, right? Because these are the people who went into captivities, who were in these land. I mean, it's, if you don't understand by now who the whole scriptures are about, you have to start from the beginning, right? But kind of. So going back to Psalms 83, verse 3, it says, and they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and have consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that's what's happened, right? It's happened really on multiple occasions, but most recently now. I mean, nobody knows that they are Israelites, Now, again, at this point in time, the scripture or the word or the truth has gone out, by way of the apostles, the elder apostles of GMS on down, right? So there's really no excuse. But, people are still ignorant, rather, right? This is Isaiah 1:3, right? It says, the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel doth not know. My people doth not consider, man, because they don't. They don't consider. They don't care to know. Like I said, there is no excuse, right? Everybody has heard this truth, right? But either you took heed to it or let it go. That's like with the parable with the casting that seed, But continuing on, right, verse 5, It says, "For they have consulted together." Oh well, let me read verse 4 again. It says, Psalms 83:4. It says, "They have said, 'Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." Right. So again, referring to Esau, Edom, they stripped us of that name. Right. When we came over here, we were, we've been known as many things: blacks, colored, Africans, Afro Americans, African Americans, you know, many things. Negroes. We've had many names. Bowards, Bowards, right? So they have cut us off from being a nation. We don't know who we are, right? Verse 5, right? It says, "For they have consulted together with one consent. They are a confederate against thee," right? And then it continues to name all of the people. But what's the first one? Verse 6, "The tabernacles of Edom," right? Which is Esau, Edom. These people, they know who the true Israelites are. They understand. The true elitists, the top, 1%ers, they know. Right? They have made a confederate against thee. Right? This is Revelation 20. I was going to read. Well, I guess I can. It's Ezekiel 36. Right? Again, just going into all of the lies, man. All of the lies. Ezekiel 36:5, it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea." And we know Idumea is just the Greek way of saying Edom, right? It says, "Which have appointed my land into their possession." What land is this talking about? The land of Israel, over there with, Jerusalem. That's the Holy Land, right? Or it was, until they polluted it, right? So it says, "And against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart," because they're prideful. Those small hatters over there, they are prideful. They love to call themselves, Jewish, which we know they are not the true Jews, right? And a completely side note, back when I was in the world, I have a tattoo, with in Hebrew, well, in your modern Hebrew writing. And I have people come up to me all the time, and they say that they either try to read it, or they always talk about how they're Jewish or whatever. They'll be like, is that Hebrew? I'm a Jew. Like they're prideful about it. They love it. I should have never got that shit, but neither here nor there. Continuing on, it says, I'll just start from the top, verse 5. It says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey." Right? So that's what again, Esau, Edom. They've or yeah, I won't grab that, but yeah, they've taken the land of Yahweh Shem Shai and claimed it to be theirs. They changed history, right? So again, when you know about your history, like the true history, you'll read, about the. Just look it up. The Balfour Declaration, right? What did this do? See if it gives me something quick. It says the Balfour Declaration of 1917 was significant as Britain's official endorsement of a Jewish home in Palestine, providing crucial international backing for Zionism, boosting Jewish immigration, and laying the groundwork for Israel's future statehood. But it also fueled Arab resentment by seeming to contradict promises of Arabs' independence, creating a deep-seated conflict and tensions that continue to shape the Israeli-Palestinian struggle, right? Which we know is neither one of their lands. It's the land of the Israelites, again. But this, you as you can see, these are ways that they change history. They make it seem like the Arabs were that's the Arabs were there. That was their land or whatever. But no, like like when you talk to people about Yahushua's image, or who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, right? His image. People say, well, he was Middle Eastern. He was a Middle Eastern guy. So they want you to think he would look like a Arab. But no, he looks just like us because he is a part of us. He was our people. But we have been removed out of that land. Therefore, we're now here in the land of our captives, right? So that was just a quick example, but Revelation 20 and I started 7 really. You see the title Satan free, doomed, right? It says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, right? This 1,000 years is referring to the Dark Ages, right? So, Jake ruled for about around 1,000 years with the Byzantine Empire from around, I think it's around like 395, something like that, around the 400, till the Renaissance, which was in the 1450s. Around there, it's 1,000 years, right? It says Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Verse 8, it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. And that's exactly what they did with the Renaissance. They repainted. When you go into the Renaissance, it quite literally means rebirth. They rebirthed, like a new, what do you want to call it? Whatever you want to call it. Rebirthed a new nation. They brought themselves, and put themselves on a pedestal, right? So verse 8 from the top, it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, in the beloved city. And fire came down from the Most High out of heaven and devoured them, right? Verse 10, right? It says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever, right? So it said what? The devil that deceived them. And we know, again, the devil is who? Esau Edom. That's that so-called devil, that wicked, right? So, it's just a quick jab, just walking through history, of how, these are just a few examples on things that they have changed, things that they have made seem, different than what it truly was, But I'm going to leave it at that. Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to end by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. And shalom to hopefully elect.